in the IEP.
He's held. As the teacher, I'm responsible for looking at the goals, and then I look at the curriculum, and I look at the learning material, and I determine what specific adaptations I need to make, and I set up learning situations to make the learning content more meaningful and relevant and interesting to the student. I didn't bring a handout, but I do have a lot of things to show you really quickly. So, again, when I adapt materials, I'm going to put this down and talk loudly, I hope.
When I adapt materials, I look at something, for example, I may take a book and I'll laminate it to make it more accessible to the students so they can interact with materials. And I may have different things they can pull off and hold. And once their turn, they can look at it and they can match, depending on what the child's IEP goal is. So I laminate a lot of things. I modify script. This is a farm book with color. I wanted to emphasize the color, and I wanted the students to identify the farm animals. So along with that, I look for more real pictures to support what's going on in the books themselves. So there's lots and lots of ways to modify material to make it accessible to the child. This is letter matching, again with Velcro. A lot of the children like that tactile input. This is alphabet matching. Here's some math where they can match the manipulatives and count as they go. This is another type of math where they can match. So there's many, many ways to adapt materials and make them interesting to the child. Some more math counters. This is handwriting without tears. This is a multisensory approach to letters and printing where the child uses manipulatives, and then they practice on a slate board, and then finally they'll go ahead and print their letters. You can find a place to put all this. Stop and go, again, if I have a child, and I seem to have a lot of children who like to move fast in the classroom and go out the door, we'll take a popular song, children's song like the freeze dance, and I'll ask the children, do you want stop or go? So they make a choice, and they're looking at the colors. And then when we play the song, instead of saying freeze, we say stop, and then we spell it, S-T-O-P. So they're working on spelling, they're working on word recognition, they're working on safety skills within the classroom. Let's see. Again, here's an adaptation of a name with the letter highlighted and colored so the child can make sense and locate his name with his picture. Farm unit, trying to make the farm more relevant instead of just a book. This book builds on itself. A lot of material we use start off as a big book, and then we sequence it to help the child understand the story, and then we try to bring in things that make that story more real to the child. These are some pictures I've made to go with the book as I tell the story. Here's another map for matching. Very plain, very simple, so that the child can look at it, understand what they're looking at. We might do body parts, so it's Spider on the Floor. That's a familiar Raffi song. And we'll use plastic spiders, and they get to make a choice whether they want green or red or brown, and then we move them on our body parts. So anything that gets their attention. Children with autism are usually, their strength is visual learning. So the first thing we do is we look at visual and environmental supports to help the child make sense of their day, the class, the routine, and the schedule. We all tend to be less anxious when we know what to expect, where to go, what to do. And that's especially true with a child with autism. So in my classroom, I may have these around the room. This directs them to specific centers when it's time. At the centers themselves, I may have something like this where they can ask for help, they need to go to the restroom, or if they're finished. So there's all different ways to provide visual structure for the child, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So when we look at the classroom itself, we need to very clearly set the classroom up using furniture into very distinct areas of purpose, because then that gives the child information about where to go, what to do and how to find materials when they get there. After we have the classroom set up, then we need to think about how those areas are set up. So we look at ways to label. This is actually a catalog picture. This is an actual photograph of the materials in a clear container. But we try to make the materials there obvious to the child. We look at the walls and we try to keep a minimum of bulletin boards. We don't want a lot of confusing visual input. We want the child to know what to attend to, what's the most important thing to look at. We may cover up shelving with sheets, or maybe cover it up or turn it around so they're not distracted by all the things going around. Along with reducing visual clutter, we also look at other sensory input, because children with autism have a hard time modulating all these incoming senses. It's kind of like when you're listening to a radio and it gets a little fuzzy and you can kind of hear two channels. You're trying to hear the one you want, but you're being distracted by these other sounds breaking in. It's kind of the same idea. Or I know for myself, when I'm driving around looking for an address, I need to turn down the radio because I don't want to hear the radio, I'm looking. Kind of the same idea for a child with autism. So we look at the classroom and then we think about ourselves. We try not to wear perfume or strong lotions that might distract a child by smell. We look at lighting and we want more subdued, soft lighting so they're not having to deal with really harsh shadows on their work. We look at sound and we try to filter out any intrusive sounds by maybe playing some soft classical music in the background, or teaching a child to wear earphones if they need to, or maybe even wearing an MP3 player and listening to something they like when they have that chance, but so that they're not distracted by the things that are going on. When I instruct my students, and there's commercial bigger pictures, but I have a book, and I may use pictures, I may use actual photographs, whatever is meaningful to the child. There's a sink with wash hands, and you can go through and see the different pictures. But this helps give the child information about where to go, what to do, what's expected of them. If they have specific sensory issues, then I'll consult with the occupational therapist, and she might tell me, why don't you take that child out and do a swinging activity before they come in for circle time? Or maybe while they're sitting, I might give them something to hold to keep their interest so they stay seated and calm down and alert to attend. We use visual schedules. Visual schedules are a very powerful way to give a child information. They sequence the events of the day in the order that they happen. They can be object, they can be photo, they can be picture, they can be a wrapper from something, or any combination. This child usually has her picture here and her name here, but for confidentiality I pulled it off. But this indicates when she arrives, she pulls this off and goes, oh, I get to go play. And then her work, she has a little work peg that I left at work. Then after she gets done with her work, she goes out to recess. When she comes back from recess, she has a toileting picture. And after that, this is a representation for the circle area. She knows that that takes her there. So I kind of look at these things in my mind as tickets. She pulls it off and, oh, this tells me I need to go over here, and this is where I'm going now. Or she'll pull off the flat, and as these go, they disappear. So she's looking at the next thing down. And maybe I might go across with it with another child, depending on the space that I have in the room. Might go up and down, or I might go sideways. At home, you could do it whatever's most convenient for you. But it's a very powerful way of letting a child know the sequence of events. It's very powerful in building flexibility and reducing anxiety in a child, because, as you mentioned, Vanessa, it's like having a planner. I can look at my planner and go, oh, I know I'm supposed to be here tonight and give a talk. Well, with a child with autism, they look at this and go, oh, this is next. I know what to do. So it reduces their anxiety level. Say you have a doctor's appointment, or you're going to take a family vacation or something out of the ordinary. You can add that in on their day and they go and look at it and they realize something different's happening. So it begins to start building in some flexibility and reduces their level of anxiety.